Hey guys, we haven't done one of these in a couple of weeks, actually, so there's going to be a lot of catching up to do. This is your weekend review episode of Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm Dan Besbris. Dan Besbris, I say again, also my Twitter handle, DANBESBRIS. Old Man Squad is the handle over on the new Blue Sky Network. Please do follow over there. As you're settling in, hit that like button on the video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, or if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, subscribe there and drop a 5-star review. For these weekend review shows, this is week 19, but at this point, who's counting? We go backwards normally through the previous basically 5 to 7 days and kind of recap everything that's going on. On this one, we have like 15 to 20 days to recap, really taking us all the way back through before the All-Star break, because I don't know that we did one. We had all those trade deadline shows coming out of trade deadline week, not surprisingly. And then that segued right into the All-Star break, where we didn't really get a chance to do it then either. So this is like a 3-week aggregate, and there will be some stuff that's kind of late on it. But you know what? We've all been half tuned in for a lot of this time. So I actually think going back a few weeks is not the worst idea in the world. Here's what I mean. We're going to start with the injury replacements. I've completely had to rebuild the injury replacement board. It's not that long right now. I've tried to really pare it down to just the names that I think are going to have a significant positive impact on your team. So these are relatively easy. We don't have to spend that much time on this. Tyus Jones in Phoenix, putting up huge numbers when Beal is out. Rashawn Holmes for the Wizards. That, of course, is with Alex Sarr on the shelf. Zach Collins has gone nuts with Vooch out and Jalen Smith out. Now, this one does require a little footnote of Jalen Smith is questionable. He might be coming back from his concussion tonight, which I think at that point, then you're probably going to get 20 some odd minutes from each of those guys. And I'm not sure that either of them ends up with value in that, but it's also possible that they both do. So feel free to tweak this one as the day goes on. Ty Jerome, if Darius Garland remains out, is down. He's a 1 carat guy. He could be at 2 carats. I can't do burgers here. I guess I could. I could do burger emojis for these going forward. Cole Anthony is a 1 burger guy with Jalen Suggs still out, and we don't know what the hell happened to Jalen Suggs. He's just disappeared. He blipped off the face of the fantasy earth. Andre Drummond in Philly. No Joel Embiid. No Gershon Yabusele right now. Precious Achiuwa with Cat, although it sounds like Mitchell Robinson might be making his season debut. Can't imagine he's going to play that much, but keep an eye on that one. And Achiuwa would then bump down off the board. And then Kevin Huerter, who I know hasn't been exactly awe-inspiring, but if he's going to get 13 to 16 shots with Ayo Dosunmu, who might be back himself, by the way, and then Patrick Williams also out, that's what is allowing Kevin Huerter to make a little bit of an impact. So that's the injury replacement stuff. This is just kind of getting you settled in. And while you settle in, visit our friends at Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number 1 source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-timer, Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion. They boast the largest selection of odds on everything from the NBA to college basketball to NHL, UFC, looping back around to baseball, looping back around to football, props, live in-game betting, ability to watch games as they play. Bet Online has it all and continues to be your number 1 sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat-trick, Bet Online has you covered with odds, stats, and more on every game, every play, and every win. Bet Online, the game starts here. Let's get into the ads. I think this is everybody's favorite part of the show. And again, some of these are looping back a few weeks. Bol Bol could have been on and off of this board 2 or 3 times since the last time we did one of these weekly review shows, but he's on there right now because he started for the Phoenix Suns, who are just an absolute train wreck of a team. Phoenix now, we've got a report from Chris Haynes that Coach Bud asked Devin Booker to be less vocal during timeouts because no one apparently can hear the coaches speak. I mean, that team is falling apart at the seams. They're losing to bad opponents now. They can't guard anyone, and I think they know that they're bad. They're now 3.5 games back of the Kings for the last play-in spot out west. They are in jeopardy of falling behind the Portland Trailblazers. I can't think of a team as disappointing as the Phoenix Suns. They're unbelievably disappointing. But the good news is that's going to open up some weirdness. And right now, the weirdness is Bol Bol, who played 29 minutes yesterday. And if he gets decent minutes, he's a fantasy juggernaut. I don't know if it's going to last, but you got to be there in case it does. Jaxson Hayes is worth an add in punt points builds. And if Rui Hachimura has to miss any time with his knee injury, that's going to actually mean more Jaxson Hayes, because Hachimura is kind of the small ball. He's not really the 5. When the Lakers go small, they're going big small, if that makes any sense, where you've got LeBron, Rui, Dorian Finney-Smith, Jared Vanderbilt are all out there at the same time in some of these lineups, because LeBron can play point guard, and then there's like one actual guard who might be Luka Doncic, who's what, 6'7", 6'8", all by himself. So that's basically an entire roster of 6'8", which is not small, but there's no center. The reason that lineup has worked is that LeBron will take it to the rim and Rui will take it to the rim. He is not the vertical threat, but at least a threat to get near the bucket and can kind of knock people around a little bit. If Rui's out, I think that forces the Lakers into more Jaxson Hayes, because they just got to have someone who is that dunk threat. And you saw it yesterday. Lakers beat the Wolves. I mean, admittedly, this was a very difficult game to watch. The officials went nuts. So I think there were, over 70 combined free throws. I don't remember what the number was in the fourth quarter alone, but it was something ungodly, where there was something like 6 or 7 straight possessions in both directions where there were free throws. I taped the game and I watched it late, and I cannot tell you how many times I fast forwarded because I won't watch free throws. Anyway, regardless of all of that, you saw 23 minutes out of Jaxson Hayes, which is not a number that he's been consistently getting lately, but with Rui down, that's the direction they had to go. So I think Jaxson Hayes may even get a little bit of a minor bump on top of whatever we thought it was to begin with. He's a top 100 kind of guy, field goal and defensive stat target, but he gets a little bit more rebounding, a little bit more scoring if we lose Rui as well. Toumani Camara, he's been an ad basically since DeAndre Ayton went down. You could call him an injury replacement, but I don't know if we see DeAndre Ayton the rest of the year, so we'll just put Camara on the ads board. And that one is relatively straightforward. And again, kind of post facto here. Like, this is one that probably should have been there a week ago or a week and a half ago. I mean, it's the whole thing is kind of hard to sort out because nobody's played more than about 6 games in the last 3 weeks. But Kamara's been very good over that stretch, shooting 52% from the field, 92% at the free throw line, and he's at 3.3 defensive stats. He's running very hot right now, is basically what we're saying. Yes, it could cool off, but it's looked good the last two to 3 weeks, which is basically what we're covering here. Same thing with Ausar Thompson. He's also been running hot over that stretch. He's shooting 69% from the field over the last 3 weeks, and he's also at 3.1 combined defensive stats. I do think that falls off a cliff at some point. I think that Ausar Thompson, at that point, probably just gets the punt free throw tag for teams that should roster him, because I think he's going to be rosterable if you're a punt free throw build, basically regardless of whether he's hot or cold. Right now, while he's hot, he's rosterable in all formats. Jose Alvarado is kind of a weird one. He's number 41 over the last 3 weeks, and he's doing it in only 27 minutes a game. But over the last couple of ball games, we've seen his minutes trend down pretty hard. I'm in favor of still adding Jose. I like the fact that he's a steals positive, he's an assist positive, he's a threes positive typically. And when he's running like even marginally field goal percent, he doesn't even need to be hot, just like not ice cold, then you'll get a little bit of other stuff mixed in. But he's also a guy that's going to thrive even more so as the Pelicans start to mess around with lineups a little bit. You're going to start to see some games where Zion doesn't play. You're going to start to see some games where McCollum doesn't play. They haven't really done it yet. They've won 3 games in a row, which is so stupid because now they're 2 games away from being better than the Raptors. Pels, you've had an awful season. All you got to do is see it to the finish line. Just be awful for another 6 weeks, and you'll get a great draft pick, and you'll get your guys back next year, and you can kind of put all those pieces together. Don't screw it up right now. You got to just be bad a little bit longer. Quentin Grimes, coming off a bad ball game. This is one of those ones where I probably have to talk you guys into it a little bit more. But, do I really, though? Because I know the last ball game was bad, but prior to that, he was very, very good for a while. He left the previous game early with an injury, but he had 3 threes before that. The previous 6 games, Grimes had looked really, really good. He was getting steals. I think he had 1 steal a game, half a block over that stretch. He was about 3.5 assists. He was sticking around 6 to 7 rebounds over that stretch, and he was scoring in double figures with almost 2 3-pointers a game. That was not someone I needed to talk you into. But 1 injury and 1 bad game later, and now I kind of do. But to me, Grimes is still an ad, and he has been pretty much since he made his Sixers debut, and we'll stick with that. By the way, we just got a report as I'm recording the show that Jalen Smith is now probable for the Bulls. So that probably knocks Zach Collins down to an I don't really know if he's going to be good enough kind of stream, but he'll probably still be okay. I can't imagine that Jalen Smith comes in just gangbusters, though he's been very good in limited minutes as well. So don't be fooled by the Jalen Smith experience. It might be a good day for him too. Not the point. Back to the weekly review. Donovan Clingan. He has disappointed a lot of teams, but he's been exactly what I told you he would be, which is a guy who did not have his minutes guaranteed, but if he could get in the low to mid 20s, he could be a really good fantasy player. Basically, since Ayton went down, Clingan is playing about 20 minutes a ball game, which is a lot less than everybody wanted him to play. But he's at 6 points, 8 boards, 2.5 defensive stats on 69% shooting from the field, and he hasn't been that bad at the free throw line either. That's good enough for a round top 100 value with, by the way, a block rate that could actually be a tiny bit better. So Clingan, this is what I told you guys. I was like, look, if Robert Williams is around, he's going to have his minutes threatened. If Jabari Walker's playing well, they're going to get threatened. If he's in foul trouble, they're going to get threatened. I think a lot of folks assumed that Clingan was just going to come out and play 30 minutes. Not going to happen. Sometimes it'll happen, but consistently not going to happen. Doesn't matter, though. He's still good enough because big guys have a very easy path to value because blocks are so freaking rare that if they can put up good field goal percent, also a relatively rare category, by the way, and rebounds and blocks, they can steer those Z-scores hard enough in the good direction that they'll belong on rosters. Kelly Olynyk is an ad in games cap formats only. I cannot possibly tell you guys to add a player who's going to sit out every back-to-back the rest of the way. But if Olynyk's in there for 25 minutes in the games he's playing, I think he does deserve a spot on rosters. He looked very good in his last 3 games for the Pels. Scoring's going to be a little bit up and down, although he's not shooting all that great over that stretch. He's a good foul shooter. I mean, he's a good percentages guy overall. He can, with decent minutes, get you around a steal and a block and sometimes a 3. But really, you're going for the rebounds, the assists, the combination of stats that makes him a very interesting play. But again, I just don't know how you roster him in a head-to-head format when he's not playing every single day. Here's some guys that have been on our ads board previously that, and again, this is like weeks old, so it's a little bit stupid, but I got to go through them again. Quick reminders on players. Kyshawn George in Washington. Second time he's appearing on this list, but it's really like week 4. Brandin Podziemski, second time on this list, and this one actually is more of like a second timer. Max Christie, this is another one where it's really since the Anthony Davis trade, so he could very easily have 3 or 4 asterisks for weeks in a row, but again, we didn't do this for a couple of weeks. Isaiah Collier, same story. Santi Aldama is an interesting one. I have him on the ads board because this show is a little bit geared towards head-to-head because more of you guys play head-to-head. And Aldama's been good again lately. I don't know if I have the stones to play him against a games cap, even though, like, when he's running warm like he has been the last basically 3, 4, 5 ball games, he's very much inside the start universe. But he fluctuates a bit. Still, I think lately he's proven himself deserving of a spot. And so we'll keep him on there. And then, like, these guys are, I mean, we added these guys to the mix weeks and weeks and weeks ago, but because we skipped a couple, they're still here. That's Okongwu, Kel'el Ware, Jaden McDaniels, Lonzo Ball. He's a games cap guy because he's likely not going to play in every game the rest of the way. These guys should all have been on the rest of season board 2 weeks ago, but we're keeping them here just because, again, we didn't do a show. Here's some guys that were on prior ads boards and where they are now. Moussa Diabate was an ad right after the trade deadline when it looked like Mark Williams was gone. He's a drop. Nick Richards is in my worry board. He's actually showing signs of life, which that's good for Nick. I don't know if it's going to stick. Will it stick for Nick? I'm going to do a Dr. Seuss thing on today's show. He's all over the map. The minutes are all over the map. He had a good game, then an okay game, then a bad game, then a good game. I think you can probably just get away with a drop, honestly. I don't think it's going to hurt you if you punt it on Nick Richards. I have him exactly 0 places because he's so damn inconsistent. And so he's like right in between worry and drop in my book, and leaning towards drop. Dalton Knecht is obviously a drop. He was on the ads board again in the wake of the Mark Williams trade. That didn't happen. Matas Buzelis is on the worry board. I'm not a big Matas guy, as you guys know, but he has had a couple of games where his minutes have been a little bit higher. I need to see them stick higher because his fantasy game is not quite there yet unless the minutes get there. Derrick Jones Jr. for a minute looked like he was going to be a thing. He's got a little bit of a window here with Norman Powell being out, although Norm has been upgraded to questionable, so he might be back for this ball game. Ayo Dosunmu, I'm going to try to put in my holds board. If you've made it this far, I did drop him in a couple of spots because I needed to make a run, and I couldn't afford to take as many zeros as he got, although it sounds like he's getting closer. So if you've made it this far, hold on. And then the saddest one certainly was Nikola Jovic, who was a 3-time ad on these shows, is now out for a month with a fractured hand. These are some of the names that we've accumulated over the weeks here. Not all of them are worth holding anymore. Bilal Koulibaly, I'm not super into him. And again, this is in order. So week 1, these were guys that made the ads board. Christian Brown and Dyson Daniels, who you should have drafted anyway. Alex Sarr in week 2. Tari Eason, PJ Washington in week 3. DeAndre Hunter in week 5. He's a drop now. Andrew Wiggins in week 6. How did Shaden Sharp get down in the wrong spot there? Because he initially appeared in week 3 and then he was off for a while because he got hurt. Shaden Sharp is a punt field goal, more of a points league kind of guy. Eve Missy, to me, is back on this list, although I think you need to be punting free throws. Chris Middleton is for games cap spots only. Mark Williams, Herb Jones is a drop. He was week 7. Malik Monk and Dante DiVincenzo were around week 9. Russell Westbrook around week 11 is a tough hold, but you should hold a little bit longer right now. Scoot Henderson in week 12 is a hold, and Andrew Nembhard in week 12 is probably a drop. These are some of the names that appeared on the ads list at least 4 times, so they got their own page on today's show. These guys are kind of difficult to hold right now, but I think you ought to do it. Scoot Henderson, minutes bouncing around a little bit, but Portland is just, with every passing week, they're going to inch a little closer to more Scoot, and he's been good enough in the meantime anyway. PJ Washington dealing with some injury stuff, but definitely a guy you want to hold on to because the upside is big. Devin Vassell, remember, we did a show, myself and my good buddy Adam King, on how Devin Vassell was actually kind of a buy low earlier this week, and then he came out and had one really good ball game to kind of wake everybody up again. If the Spurs can be competitive, Devin Vassell can put up some pretty big numbers. Eve Missy, we already talked about him. Eve, again, I think you need to be punting free throws. And Chris Middleton, again, and Shaden Sharp. These guys managed to work themselves onto the hold board, but I already told you about them, so we can move on. Hey, before we get to the worries board, let me see if I can do this stuff a little bit out of order today. I want to tell you guys about, how do I do this in a simple way? There's my face. Oh, you know what? Like and subscribe. I keep forgetting to do that in the middle of the show. We're more than halfway through. If you've been enjoying what we're doing, if you're new, if you've been watching and you're thinking about it, please do hit that subscribe button. We really want to try to amass as many users as possible before the season ends, which we're not that far away from the end of the fantasy season. And what that does for me personally, and I appreciate you guys coming along with me on this journey with Old Man Squad, is when we get in towards really like free agency, so July, and then everything starts to slowly ramp back up again. You hit August where leagues open, then draft season really starts to kick off kind of in September. There will be this nice big foundation of subscribers and users. So please hit that subscribe button. And please, if you haven't already, find me on Twitter at Dan Bespris. I already put in my Underdog fantasy card today. How about them apples? I'll make it real big and easy to read for you folks on the YouTubes, but I'll tell everybody else about it. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com today. Sign up using promo code OLDMAN, OLDMAN, or simply click the link in the show description, and you can get a deposit match bonus up to $1,000 at a 50% clip and a free play to use at whatever time you want. I would strongly recommend you kind of learn the format a little bit before you start using some of your promos. But today, and I might have forgotten to hit the button, there is a promo for a 50% odds boost as well. And today I went with Austin Reeves higher than 21.5 points because Luka and LeBron are questionable. I would be floored if both of them were in. It feels almost a guarantee that one or the other or both are out. This game kind of feels a little bit like a possible throwaway game for the Lakers, who are tied with the Rockets for the 4 seed out west. But, the Lakers are old. They're a pretty old team, and their schedule is going to be rough here over the next little bit. So they got to find opportunities to take a little bit of a breather. And right now, this is one of those opportunities. The Lakers, if they skip this game, they've got the Clippers again on Sunday. Next week is relatively light. The beginning of week 21 is somewhat light. That's kind of an opportunity for them to get right. And then the schedule gets insane. They actually play 6 games over 8 days on March 13th. Guys are going to be getting breathers there. So the Lakers are kind of budgeting themselves. They look ahead. They're thinking, okay, well, how many of these games can we actually take? Do the Clippers have any back-to-backs that might catch them there? No, they don't. So you're going to get the full Clippers roster. Lakers are probably going to try to go 1-1 against the Clips over these next 2 days. They'll try to beat the Pelicans. They feel like they could probably beat the Knicks, the Nets. Boston obviously is going to be a really tough one. But, the playoffs are more important. So I went Austin Reeves higher than 21.5 points. I also went Nickeil Alexander-Walker higher than 14.5 for Minnesota in their ball game tonight. I didn't even really look to see who the Wolves were playing. I think it's a bad defensive team. Yeah, it's Utah. So you might get the JV squad there. Anthony Edwards is suspended for that game. I don't know if Julius Randle's coming back, but even if he's not, Nickeil Alexander-Walker is going to get enough shots, certainly, to get to that marker. It's a tough game in altitude coming off the late game in Los Angeles. So from that standpoint, I don't think they're going to be defending very much. This game might have an up and down clip. So those are the plays. Austin Reeves higher, Nickeil Alexander-Walker higher. If you want to tail, have at it. I only put $3 on it, but it's 3 to win 9. Let's have a little bit of fun. Let's get back to what we were working on before. And I know I screwed up the tech on this for the YouTubers, but I promise I'll get this screen back up for everybody to look at. There it is. So the time to worry board is where we left off. Andrew Nemhard, who frankly you could also cut if you really wanted to. Nick Richards, we already talked about. Russ, we talked about. Buzelis, we talked about. Ayo, we talked about. Denny Avdia is the one name on the worry board that we have not talked about yet. And that one, to me, might come down to the injury report. I don't know if Avdia is going to play in the Blazers' next ball game. I hope that he does. They're in Brooklyn tonight. So a game that should be competitive, meaning guys should be there towards the end. The problem, of course, is that with Avdia, he has these holes in his fantasy game that a lot of folks are readily willing to overlook. He's not a good foul shooter, and he's a high turnovers guy. If you're punting either of those, he becomes someone that you can probably play in almost any format. And certainly when Jeremy Grant has been out, Avdia has put up some very, very big numbers. But is he someone like, look, listen, playoffs start for a lot of us on Monday. That's lopping off the final 3 weeks of the year, which is exactly what I was telling you guys to do. And I know Josh was telling you guys to do that as well. So if that's the format you're in and Avdia is not in there, and this is for anybody, it's not just Denny, you can't really hang on to guys who are hurt going into your playoffs. And if you're fighting to get into the playoffs, you have that to contend with. I think you pretty much just have to do with Avdia what his health suggests, which is wait and see. They have a Sunday, Monday back-to-back rolling into next week. So, like, scheduling-wise, it's a pretty good spot. And you're hoping that he can get in there and play. For Roto, I don't think that he's all that important. For head-to-head, I think I would try to hang on. And that's why he's on the worry board. We had a nice long cuts board because this, again, is 3 weeks worth of names. We also have a bunch of names down at the bottom that we've talked about before. So don't worry basically about those last 4 names if you're looking at YouTube. I will, however, go through the first 8. One of them is Zach Edey. He was on our ads board 4 different times, but it's not consistent enough. Every once in a while, I'll have a decent ball game, but he's not a shot blocker in the way that Donovan Clingan is. So 20 minutes for Edey isn't quite the same as 20 minutes for Clingan. The rebounding will be relatively constant. Edey's probably a tiny bit of a better scorer, but he's on a team that has way more scoring threats, so you're not going to see him do all that much. He's a better foul shooter than Clingan if you go long-term, but you want those defensive stats. And so that's why with Edey, I'm not willing to have the same patience. I think he's a drop. Derrick Jones Jr., we talked about already. Nikola Jovic, we talked about already. Bilal Coulibaly, we've talked about in the show a lot of times. And you guys are going to yell at me on this one, but just from a 9-cat standpoint, he's bad. His game doesn't translate to 9-cat. There's something is wrong with it in every damn ball game, seemingly. There's a lot of stuff to point at and say, look at those. Those are good. But, like, his scoring is merely fine. It's not a positive. The rebounding is kind of fine, not a positive. The assists are a small positive. The defensive stats tend to be a small positive, but he's bad at both percentages. His turnovers are too high. And, threes are kind of average in that range as well. So you've got too many bad categories and not enough good ones. It feels like for the whole damn season, Coulibaly has been like right on the fringe of having enough good ones to outweigh the bad and just can't get over the hump, at least not more than for a couple of games at a time. So I don't think he needs to be rostered. If you're punting a couple of things, fine, but I'm not punting multiple things, and I don't strongly suggest it. Tyus Jones is on the cut board, although right now he doesn't really belong there. So if you see him, just revert back to the injury replacement stuff. But if Bradley Beal comes back, then Jones becomes a cut. Goga Bitadze is on the cuts board. He just hasn't been the same since the Magic got healthy, and he wasn't for a while. I thought maybe he'd win that job back, but he also hasn't really done that. DeAndre Hunter, we talked about already. He's, backup level guy. He's going to play a decent amount for the Cavaliers, but he's just not going to have the usage you'd need. And as much as I love the Time Lord in games cap spots with the Blazers, he's just not healthy enough to hang on to. So that's your rather extended cuts board. And finally, the watch list. And a number of these guys, you could make a case belong on rosters right now, but I don't know. Let's go through them one by one, and that way I can at least talk you through the ones where I'm closer than others. Wendell Carter Jr. is on my watch list. I don't think he's ever going to get past that because I don't think his fantasy game is ever going to evolve. Moses freaking Brown is on my watch list. That is not one that I thought I'd be talking about on today's show, but he played 31 minutes for the Mavs yesterday. I don't really know why he didn't play in the previous ball game because there wasn't any obvious player that was out for this last one that wasn't out in a prior one. That is to say, Anthony Davis is out for another few weeks. Derek Lively's out for a couple of weeks. Daniel Gafford is out for a couple of weeks at least. And Dwight Powell just came back, but Dwight played in both of these ball games against the Lakers and against the Hornets. And looking at the Moses Brown thing, I don't know if it's just because he was playing better in this one or because the Hornets are absolutely terrible, but it's certainly worth keeping an eye on if he rolls out 20 some odd minutes in the next ball game. I can't imagine he will because it's Milwaukee and he's going to get pushed around by some big people in a way that Charlotte sort of can't, but there he is. Karlo Matkovic is also on my watch list. Right now, it seems like he's more of an injury replacement level guy. Kelly Olynyk sat out the last one for the Pelicans, and Matkovic went for 17 and 10. My guess would be that Zion probably sits the back-to-back second half today, and Karlo could have another decent ball game. So watch for back-to-backs on the New Orleans schedule. You might be able to actually play Matkovic in both of those if they sit Olynyk on one and Zion on the other. And I can't imagine that we're more than a few weeks away from the Pelicans pulling the plug on some other players also. But right now, when Zion and Olynyk, and basically when the front court is healthy, Matkovic is getting, 22, 23 minutes, and that's just not enough. So watch list for now. Stephon Castle is on my watch list. That's for category leagues. If you're in a points format, you should probably be on your roster already because you don't really care about the fact that he's going to completely destroy both of your percentages. He's not good at either of them. He's also a high turnover player, which you'd expect out of a rookie. He has basically the rookie fantasy profile where he can score and he can pass a little bit. Rebounds not all that much. Steals are fine, but unspectacular, but the turnovers are not great, and the percentages is really where he's killing you. He also doesn't shoot many three-pointers. He is way over-rostered in fantasy leagues right now. Way over-rostered. People are like, Dan, he's been better lately. Yeah, over the last month, he's averaging 15, 4, and 3 with 1.4 steals, and guess what rank he is? 164, because he's a high volume, 44% from the field. He's a high volume, 75% at the free throw line. He's at 2 turnovers or higher per game. He doesn't hit 3-pointers. You can't look at 2 categories and say that this guy just needs to be rostered. So as fun as Stephon Castle is, and it's possible that he gets the usage to overwhelm the bad stuff if the Spurs start, say, if they shut down Vassell or Darren Fox or whatever, then there might be enough. But right now, it's a good ball game is 22-7-5. That last ball game was really good for him, but that came on the heels of 3 games that were really hurting you. And he got 22 shots in that one, which, I mean, look, like anybody taking 22 shots belongs on rosters, but it just hasn't been there yet. Keon Johnson and Zaire Williams, I probably should have in the ads board, but I kind of want to see what they do tonight. With Cam Thomas making his return. I don't know how much Cam Thomas is going to play. There's a pause there where I was thinking about it for a minute. Apologies on that. I'm assuming Cam plays like 18 to 20 minutes, but he's probably also going to try to take about 18 or 20 shots. And that's possible that him getting in there and just having the ball for every minute he plays might be enough to kind of ruin some of these other dudes. So I'm a little bit cautious with them. I think if you have them on your team, which you probably do in the head-to-head spot side, you can just roll them out there and see what happens. But we'll take it moment by moment. Day'Ron Sharpe is on my watch list. He was amazing in the last ball game with no Nick Claxton, but Claxton's back. He was suspended for flagrant foul points. And until Claxton gets shut down or is just whatever, Sharpe is kind of right on the outside. So close, and yet so far. Keon Ellis is on my watch list. I won't be fooled again. Quoth the Who. He's been on and off of my roster like 4 times since the last time I did one of these weekly lineup shows or weekly review shows because his minutes go from 33 to 20 back and forth every 2 games, basically. I need to see consistency before I do it again. And then KJ Martin is on my watch list. He's been filling in nicely for John Collins, just something to keep a watch on if Collins ever does shut it down completely, although it does still kind of feel like there are more watch list names, by the way. It does kind of feel like Utah's just going to be sort of playing with their varsity squad until all of this is done. Other watch list names, Bogdan Bogdanovic for the Clippers. I don't think he ultimately gets to do enough. All of the Atlanta wings we've talked about on this show all week long. Karis LeVert, George Niang, Zachary Reese-Shea. I don't think any of these guys get over the hurdle for more than a game or 2 at a time. The nice thing is about this watch list, almost the entire watch list, if you go back here, basically any of these guys would be a perfectly viable schedule play on the head-to-head side. The reason they're watch list for me is I'm watching to see if these guys can have rest of season appeal. That doesn't mean don't play them for, a 3-game-and-4 night or a 5-game-and-7 or whatever it is. They'd be great in those spots. But for holding throughout, not quite so much. Davion Mitchell, same story with Miami. To me, a usage guy would have to go down before I would trust him outside of his schedule play. Alex Caruso, it sounds like he's going to get a day off. And otherwise, actually, I think I'd be in on Caruso. But if he's not going to play every ball game, I don't think I can tell you guys to do that. Aaron Wiggins, so reliant on getting enough shots because he's a high percentages dude. Makes a lot of sense if you need scoring on good percentages, which is not easy to find out there. It's a tough combo, so that does make him kind of intriguing. But again, I don't know that he's a guy that I feel comfortable playing every day, especially with the Thunder being mostly healthy right now. And then Buddy Hield will probably just live on the watch list because every once in a while it looks like the Warriors are like, oh yeah, Buddy Hield, he's a guy we're going to use. And then they don't. But it looks like the Warriors have kind of figured out now that with Jimmy Butler out there, Brandin Podziemski is turning out to be the right fit. And so Hield, maybe I will finally take him off the watch list next time. Just so that, like a big screw you. we don't need to worry about you anymore, buddy. Buddy boy. I don't know what's going on with my PC right now, but I can tell you definitively that something started running slow, which I think means that it's probably time for me to get the hell out of here. I am Dan Bespris. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. This is Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Please hit that subscribe button on the way out and like the video. Comment section is open as per usual. 5-star reviews if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify really do go a long way. I will be back. I don't know. I was kind of hoping to do another one later today, but I don't know what topic it would be on. We'll figure something out. Worst case, we'll get a show to you first thing on the weekend. Of course, we'll have a big weekly preview show that's on Sunday. And then, remember, starting on Monday, we will have every day, that's the goal at least, for 6 consecutive weeks, a streaming show. In addition to whatever we're doing, we'll have the sort of normal recap show where we talk about everything going on in the NBA. But we're going to have, it'll be more preview-y, but it's going to be about head-to-head playoffs. Or head-to-head getting into the playoffs or whatever you want to do there. Or even, frankly, Roto, if you're like trying to hard charge a particular category or you're behind in games played or something like that. So we're going to have a lot of shows coming up, and they're going to be geared towards getting us through, boom, blasting through the tape at the finish line, winning our head-to-head leagues, winning whatever leagues in fantasy basketball. I can't believe we're in the stretch run, guys. 6 weeks left. Man, it's been a good journey so far, but the fun has just begun. Thanks to BetOnline and Underdog Fantasy. I'm Dan. See you guys soon.